between Isaac and Jeff, there was so much passion for the game and so much excitement and so much possibility that I was sold by the end of it. I was a little skeptical at the start, but by the end of it, I was sold. And then for me, when I really fell in love with it is when we developed the solo version. That's when I personally was like, oh, this is going to be a really cool game now. I am so excited to work on this.
If you've never heard of Isaac Vega or Lindsey Rode, you might have heard of their games. Isaac put out the incredibly popular Dead of Winter. Lindsey Rode made Labryinthos, which you've probably heard us talk about on our interview with Alyssa Menold. Well, they've combined forces and created what is called Rose Gauntlet Entertainment, a brand new gaming company. I sit down with Isaac and Lindsey and we talk about what they designed before they combined forces, and we also talk about their new game. The first game coming out of their studio. It's called Keystone North America, and it'll be difficult to listen to this and not get excited. If you're catching this close to when the episode is released, it should be still available on Kickstarter. We've got the link in the show notes. Stick around because each of their stories are fascinating. We figure out how Isaac had a crisis of careers and ended up in game design. We learn how Lindsey went from game lover to volunteering at cons to making her own games to now founding a gaming company. Both of them are delightful. We get some great insights in how the sausage is made. So how about you sit back, relax, and enjoy my discussion with Isaac and Lindsey. Enjoy.
Third Floor Wars delivers interviews, insights, and discussions about everything hitting the tabletop. In a world where life hits you from all sides, you deserve time to relax, disconnect, and unplug. Rule books, plastic models, dice, and cards in hand. Let the gaming begin. Tabletop games let you escape and unleash grand battles and regale epic tales of adventure with your friends. If you love gaming and learning from players, designers, experts, and creators, you are in the right place. Pull up a chair. Craig and Ray welcome you to the third floor and the Tabletop Talk podcast.
Howdy friends, Craig here. Today we're talking to Lindsey Rode and Isaac Vega, the founders of the gaming company Rose Gauntlet. Lindsey, for close to a decade, has applied her passion for design towards making board games. She's contributed to several board games and role-playing properties and has been a tabletop game creative director and kickstarted and delivered 2 of her designs. And I'm a big fan of one of them she just recently put out. I was a backer, and if you guys remember, we had Alyssa Menold on, who was the artist for Labryinthos, and I'm a big fan of that. So, Lindsey, welcome to the third floor.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. I've heard that your interviews are super fun. So you have a high bar to reach based on everyone I've talked to, including Alyssa, on how much fun your interviews are.
Well, I'm glad. So, Lindsey, you know, we've got a ton of stuff to talk about, and then we've got to get to Isaac. But the one thing I always like to find out is how you got here. So let's start with you as a gamer. When did you first consider yourself a gamer?
Oh, I don't know. I've been playing games for a long time. So it's really the transformation of a gamer over the course of many different variations. I started playing Magic the Gathering when I was 12. It helped me learn to read. I was a little bit behind. It helped me learn to read really well.
Oh, no kidding. That's cool.
Yeah. Also empty. I think it was about the same cost as a tutor would have been if my parents had just gotten me a tutor, because it turned out to be a very expensive hobby for them to endorse.
And you can't sell your tutor when you're done with them, but your Magic cards.
So I started with Magic. I was going to Friday Night Magics. I played Warhammer 40K as a teenager. A lot of zombies with 3 exclamation points, like any garage sale board games my brothers and I would get and have a great time with. But it wasn't until I was kind of in like my mid-20s and I had kind of left the Magic scene a little bit after getting burnt out that I started playing the more modern board games. And I don't know, that's not when I became a gamer, but that's when I'm like, oh, I think I have a problem, and it's called board game addiction.
Now, do you remember a game in particular that kind of blew your mind a little bit?
Definitely Dead of Winter was the one that made me want to become a designer. So it's so cool that Isaac and I are now business partners. That is a very
Now, if he wasn't surreal. Here, what was the real answer to that question?
Yeah, it's still just so surreal. And yeah, I mean, I used to hold Isaac in very high regard. Now we work together, so it's all different. But
so out of curiosity, what was it? What? Because I mean, I've always find it interesting, right? Because I think all of us as gamers, whether it be miniature games, board games, or anything, we come across a game that makes us go, "Holy cow!" Like the whole world's different now, and like this is not what I thought it was. So what was it? Just, you know, we're not going to go deep into Dead of Winter, but what was it about Dead of Winter now that you look back on it that kind of blew your mind?
It was two parts. One, I had never betrayed a friend before, and it felt incredibly good. Like, I just really dug the whole concept of betrayal. Yeah. That just really, because I had never come across that mechanic, and it just brought a whole nother level to the game. And then the other one was just the amount of storytelling.
Yeah.
Because I am also a huge RPG fan. Used to trick girlfriends at sleepovers to play D&D with me, which had varying degrees of success. But it was the first game where it incorporated storytelling, which is kind of my real passion for game design, with really, really cool mechanics. So I think that was the most mind-blowing.
So now let's fast forward a little bit. When did you first start meddling and start tinkering and start not playing but making?
It was the night I got home from my first day volunteering for Plaid Hat Games. I stopped by because we were in the city, I stopped by like a CVS or some sort of drugstore. I bought a notebook, and I actually started developing Labryinthos that first night.
No kidding. Wow.
It did. It took, I think, 5 years for it to actually come out. But that first night, Labryinthos was the first concept and the first thing I ever showed anyone.
That's a good start, because it's a damn good game. Yeah, come out of the gate strong.
Back then. It was not back then when poor Isaac had to look at it. And I talked about this when I was on with Alyssa, because I was not familiar with you as a designer, but being a huge fan of her art, and I mean, she was a perfect pick for it because it gives such a neat look and feel to the game. That's why I backed it, was because of her. And then I read the rules and started playing. I'm like, well, shit, this is actually a good game, too. Now I got to get Lindsay on the show, because I think this is a very clever game. And at some point, what we'll probably need to do is get you back on, because I would love to do a whole episode about the progression, especially knowing that you weren't real happy with it from the very beginning. But you're not my only guest, Lindsay. So let's talk a little bit about Isaac Vega. He's been making board games for well over a decade. With 9 designs and multiple expansions, he's sold over 500,000 copies of his work. Wow. And if you have not played Dead of Winter or Ashes Reborn games, you are missing out, because apparently if you play Dead of Winter, you soon get a chance to work with Isaac and design games, which we just learned. So, Isaac, welcome to the third floor.
Thank you for having me, Craig. It's nice to be here.
So you might appreciate this, Isaac. So Lindsay's mic is how I ended up getting connected with Lindsay. And we had a really good interview with him, and then I did not realize, I knew that they'd put out Labryinthos. I didn't realize that, you know, who Lindsay was. And long story short, I'm like, I gotta get Lindsay on the show. She goes, oh, I should get my partner on as well with Rose Gauntlet. It's like, great, let's have you both come on. And he goes, yeah, his name's Isaac Vega. I'm like, get the hell out of here. Because you're a little bit of a celebrity for me, man, because I'm also, like Lindsay, a huge fan of your work, dude.
Well, thank you.
How did you become a gamer, and how did you transform into a designer?
So yeah, similar to Lindsay, like I dabbled in some Magic and stuff when I was younger. Played some card games and things like that, but I never really had a lot of finances growing up, so I couldn't afford really engaging in those games. It was just kind of like when I was around my friends, I played the decks they gave me and things like that. And then when I came back from dropping out of college, I kind of met up with those friends again from high school that had transitioned to card games and went straight into board games. And they started showing me Dominion. They started showing me Pandemic and Puerto Rico and Ticket to Ride, and I was like, what is this world? It's
amazing, isn't it?
I had no idea there was board games outside of Monopoly and Sorry.
Yeah.
So I was just like, wow, this is really, really awesome. So I was just absolutely hooked. Like they showed me their little collection of time that bloomed up very, very quick.
They multiply.
Yeah, and I was just obsessed, and it was really that game group was really like a very big highlight in my life during the time, because I was kind of having a hard time in my life during that time. So like every Friday going over to their house and playing board games was just like a godsend. It was amazing.
It's been huge for me because I'm an introvert, and I'm an introvert to the point where it's very easy for me to talk myself out of being social. Like once I am social, I'm fine. Like, right. So, 5 minutes before this interview, the last thing I wanted to do was talk to two of you, because that's how my stupid brain works, or that's how I'm wired. But as soon as I get here, I'm like, thank God, this is a great time. And board games and miniature games have been like that for me too, Isaac, where, you're forced to go out Friday night and play Magic. You're forced, you make a commitment ahead of time, and it pushes you out there. So the same question, though, for you, Isaac, at what point did you transform and start meddling and picking up a notebook and start, saying, I want to make something?
So I was very, very quick.
And if you're a designer, it goes very quickly.
We started playing Puerto Rico at 7.
I finding out about the fact that this was something that people actually did for a living, and looking at my circumstances in Northwest Ohio, I was like, I'll do anything. I'm like, why not?
That's really funny.
And I originally went to college for video game design.
Oh, okay.
And then after dropping out, I was kind of like disheartened from my professor saying, like, oh, people will never listen to your designs. You're just going to be a grunt for 10 years, and then maybe one day you'll work up the ladder far enough, and then eventually they'll take your ideas. And I was like, the only reason I came here is because I had so many ideas. Yeah. Like, I don't want to just make 3D models. That's not what I want to do.
They were being honest with you, though. It's a grinding industry.
They very much were. Yeah. And that was like 2005, before the indie boom of video games, where people really thought, like, oh, 2-3 people can actually make a video game a reality. So I was just like, I'll just sell insurance or do something else. Like I'll just be a grown up, right? Yeah. But like, that design bug was always in me, and I wanted to make something, and to realize that I could do it within a cardboard box. And it's just like, this paper, this is cardboard. I can do this. Like, I can make this happen. And honestly, those games that I mentioned earlier, Puerto Rico, Dominion, Ticket to Ride, Battlestar Galactica, it's certainly inspired a lot of what ended up taking place in Dead of Winter. Yep. And there was just so much inspiration within those things, and I just took everything that I absolutely loved from mechanics and the things that engaged me, and started designing around those things. City of Remnants is definitely a hodgepodge of a whole bunch of different mechanics that I loved at that time. And being my first design, it was crazy, because like, it was I like learned about board games, and within 6 months I had signed a board game.
That's incredible. That is absolutely incredible. So guys, the Insider Insights series is my opportunity to sit down with designers, developers, artists, writers, and creators and learn about their approach to their work. I try to understand their process, inspiration, and methods for crafting their creations. So we got a little bit of an origin story. What we're going to do is take a quick break. When we get back from this break, I want to talk about how they got linked up together and some of the iterations that they went through on designs without each other, and how that's changed now that they're working together. We'll be right back.
If you're an athlete, you know the greatest motivator of all is the fear of letting your teammates down. After all, a team is only as good as its weakest link. So you owe it to those wearing the same jersey as you to be your best every time you step on the field. That's why there's no vape in team. When you vape, you can expose your lungs to toxic chemicals that can damage your lungs. If you're a step behind, the team's a step behind. Brought to you by The Real Cost and the FDA.
Howdy friends, Craig here. You deserve a new playmat. Here on the 3rd floor, we use Mats by Mars. They are scratch resistant, waterproof, wet erase marker compatible, almost free of glare, and lighter than neoprene. Mats by Mars gives you over 40 designs to choose from. You pick a mat, pick a design, and then you pick an overlay, like one for Marvel Crisis Protocol, Star Wars Legion, or even Malifaux 3rd Edition. Those overlays will really speed up your deployment and make the placement of objective markers so easy. Use our promotion code in the show notes to get a 10% discount on your first order. In the notes of your order, you can even request the 3rd floor logo on your mat for free. That makes the best mat in the business even a little better. So get some new mats, save yourself some money, and help support the show. Go to matsbymars.com. All the details are in the show notes, including the discount code. So we kind of figured out, how each of you found gaming and how each of you started tinkering. And I've got a sneaking suspicion I know where this is headed based off of someone talking about volunteering for Plaid Hat Games. But when did the two of you first run into each other?
Well, yeah.
Do you want to go first, Isaac? We know this story really well.
I'm sure you do.
Yeah.
So I was super into board games. I can't express enough how into board games I was at this point in my life. It's only gotten worse, but everything's very new and shiny. So I wanted to go to a board game convention, but no one would go with me. And I'm like, well, if no one will go with me, then I'll volunteer. And then people will have to be my friends for at least the 8 hours I signed up for.
I like how your mind works. I like this.
And then when I was looking through companies to volunteer for, Plaid Hat was accepting them for, I believe, it was either Origins or Gen Con. I don't remember. I think it might have been Gen Con. And I'm like, oh, they made Dead of Winter. That's perfect. They're the best people I know. I'll go work for them. And then I met Isaac shortly after the first morning. And I think by the end of that convention, we were had taken a blood oath and we're best friends.
So, we laugh about that, but what was the shared commonality? Just personalities clicking, or?
Honestly, it was just when you're in a convention setting and you're a small company and a small business, and these people have come, they've donated their weekends, they've donated their vacation time, they're spending their blood, sweat, and tears selling your game with so much more glee than you could ever have for your own brain.
I wish I liked Dennis Winter as much as she did.
Exactly. You can't help but appreciate that and love that. And they're just as engaged and in love with the industry as you are. And Lindsey was that and so much more. And she was just so, I know that she probably doesn't think this, but she was really cool and fun. She was. And I really enjoyed being around her and talking to her. And we had a lot in common. We keep finding out how much we have in common the more we get to know each other. It's crazy. And we like so many of the same things. And we just enjoy talking to each other. And obviously, games just have an amazing way of just you sit across the table, you enjoy yourself, and that time in Plaid Hat's history, everybody was just rowdy and had a great time every night after the convention.
It was crazy. We had an irresponsible amount of fun after the convention.
there was great food, there was great drinks, we were playing everything we possibly could on every playable space on the hotel room.
We were playing on the hotel hallway floors because we were filled out. I remember that.
We filled the place out. We destroyed those hotel rooms like if we were rock stars.
No, that's fantastic.
It's crazy.
I also want to point out that this was the year that Dead of Winter came out.
Wow.
And it was also a bond forged through the chaos.
Yes.
That was that convention, because that convention was bonkers.
Yeah, it was the most successful con that we had ever had in Plaid Hat's history, period, because we sold out, in 2 hours? We sold 500 copies of the game.
Nuts.
It was absolutely nuts.
Everyone who worked there just became a band of brothers.
It's just survival at that point. Yeah. So I apologize for not knowing this, Isaac, but what had happened there? Did just the word get out, or was it just an instant hit? I don't really know the history of the success of the game.
So it's really interesting because it's kind of accidentally ended up being the most marketed game that Plaid Hat had ever done before then. So we had the largest playtesting group we had ever had in our history. So that was number one.
Right.
That was really good to getting the word out. A lot of people in the industry now were talking about it, buzzing about it. The playtesters were excited about it. And then as soon as we said something about it, we had all of this flood of support. People just it's going to be great. You guys are going to love it. Blah, blah, so there was much support there. The game was actually named something different. It was always Dead of Winter, but it wasn't a Crossroads game. It was named The Survivor Chronicles, but that ended up being a book series that we didn't want to get sued over. We had to change the name, and then we changed some core concepts of the game. The crossword cards were actually added in really, really late into the entire development process. We were actually going to go to print without them.
Wow.
And because of that, we halted everything. after we had already kind of previewed it, which we didn't expect to do.
Sure.
So because of that, that also just like, okay, we're previewing this way earlier than we normally did. We had so many playtesters than we normally had.
Yep.
And now the buzz was already and it kind of like that news kind of came out around like November-ish. So everybody was putting it on their list of like games they're excited for 20
great.
Whatever year it was.
I don't remember.
It's funny how that can all fall together though, right?
Yeah, so there was a lot of different things. Yeah.
And your timing was great too, as far as like The Walking Dead was a big deal.
Yes.
And that had you had that zeitgeist going on, and the concept of a zombie board game was not new. There was a ton of zombie board games.
They were big. I remember that being like someone saying it wasn't going to make it because it was a zombie game.
Yes,
that was a big thing.
We got a lot of that actually. People were like, "You should like," especially in like testing when I was showing it to friends and things like that. They were like, "I really like it, but it really shouldn't be a zombie game." Like it was like, I remember driving home from an event after someone had said that to me and Colby, and I was telling Colby, it's just like, it can't be anything else.
No, it
like it just can't. Like it screams zombie. Like I don't know what else people.
Well, and another confession is I avoided it as another zombie game until the avalanche of what you're talking about. I'm like, God damn, if one more person tells me that I need to play this stupid game. So then I buy it and I'm like, God, why did I wait so long? This is a really good game.
Yeah, and I think that was what everybody's hesitation was.
Yeah.
They knew that the market was incredibly saturated with zombie games. And like even then, like I think that was right after Zombicide, which was like a huge hit. There was lots of good zombie material out there. I think like, what was it, Friday Night something, I don't remember that one, but there were so many other zombie games that were just doing so well, and I just knew that me and John both even discussed this, that we just like, there's no zombie game that's doing this. Well, and they're missing the core concept of what is engaging about the zombie theme. And that's why we felt like we had to bring it to market, and we were incredibly excited about it, and it seems like it all hit. There were so many things that happened, that domino effect. That's
awesome.
And it ended up making it be a huge hit, and still an amazing success for me in my life.
Well, and you think about it too, though, and this is the reality, is that like just like anything, there's luck involved. But if it was a shitty game, it wouldn't have succeeded, right?
Right.
So it's a combination of both. So Lindsey, you spend time at the convention, slave labor at that point, indentured servitude.
That weekend it was. I just remember like Isaac running around with burgers, being like, "You get a burger and you get a burger," and I'll be like, "Don't stand up, don't stand up, you'll be trampled."
At the end of it, you're like, "So it's a game about zombies." We sold out the first hour. So you start working on your game, and I'd be curious to know at what point, because you already mentioned that Isaac looked at it. So at what point did you put it in front of Isaac, and what was that conversation like?
So I put it in front of Isaac, I think the second convention that we did together, which was soon after. Because after I got the bug, I did every convention that I could afford and had vacation time for. I did them all. So it was pretty early, probably too early for what it was, but Isaac was very kind. So was Emerson. I remember Emerson sat down at the table and I was like, oh my God, that's not what I wanted. It was like Emerson, Colby, and Isaac. So it was just like this dream team of designers with my first crappy little prototype.
It's like Carcassonne.
And I can't even describe how different it was. Like anyone who designs and takes it all the way to the end, I'm sure like they know like the kinds of transformations from your first iteration and how almost all of it gets thrown out and it just keeps improving over the years or however length of time you have. So it was really raw. It was like a memory game and you're like flipping over tiles and trying to remember where the keys were. And it was just about finding the 4 keys. There weren't characters or anything like that. Like it was like a little out of pocket memory game. But I found that I can't really do small things. It seems to be an issue with me. So it kept growing and growing and growing. And then it was, I think when it really became Labryinthos, the final version, or when it started to get on track for what the game was eventually going to be, I was just drilling the game at a bar with Mike, my boyfriend, and the owner of Dogbite Games. We were just drilling the game over and over and over again. And we came up with the idea of the Minotaur and the characters and the tile rotations. And then after that, it came together fairly quickly.
Yeah.
And then I showed it to Isaac again who had some really great insights. The keys, covering the keys, actions and stuff. That was his
I love
brain.
that mechanic. That's yours, Isaac. That's good.
That's an Isaac mechanic. But that's why you show it to other designers and stuff, because sometimes they think of things that you would have never thought of. And I showed it around cons for, I think, 2 years. The last one I showed it. Yeah, the last one I showed it to was at Shucks. The last Shucks that happened before COVID. And everyone just loved it. And I'm like, I think it's done. I don't know what else to do.
It's a good game. And like I said, I didn't buy it because I thought it was going to be a good game. I bought it because I thought it was going to be a pretty game. And I was absolutely delighted. I was absolutely delighted. And I've been exposed to so many games, Lindsey, and it's not easy for me to go, oh, that's clever. Like, that's clever. Like, there's little touches that you have in the game. And like, at some point we're going to have you on and we're going to talk all about it. But there's some neat little stuff that you don't read in the rules that you see when you play the game. And I love games that I can read the rules and I can understand it. And then like I played a second time and I'm like, oh, now this makes sense. Let's play again. You know,
yeah, I love
and
it.
it's full of that, which is great. But now, you know, for Dead of Winter and Isaac, it's a much different process to bring that to life, right? Because of, you know, where Isaac was and, you know, and things like that. It was a much different process for you, though. So can you just kind of give us an idea of when you said, okay, this is done. I'm going to want to put this out to the world. What did that look like?
So I remember John and I had been working on it, and I told John, we can't show Colby for a while. I didn't want to, I very much wanted to always keep my designs like away from the Plaid Hat team up until I felt like this is signable. I will get a contract at the end of this conversation. I like to be in that zone, especially for Dead of Winter and Ashes. Like, I wanted to be in a very, very good place.
Right.
Just because, like, I had already known Colby's, like, his style, like, what he liked and things like that. So I was just like, I'm just going to wait because I know it's not ready yet. And it's always easier to have the conversation when you know you're probably going to get a yes.
Sure.
So we actually premiered it the first time at a Gen Con around, like, Colby, and we had Bistro there, who's like designed Dungeon Run for Plaid Hat Games. He's nice. My co-designer on Forgotten Waters as well. We had Jerry, who's done multiple Mice and Mystics games and a whole bunch of amazing things for Plaid Hat. And Chad, our sculptor, who's done pretty much all the sculpting for Plaid Hat, and Colby as well. And I was just like, okay, it was perfect time. They're all tired. They're all a little drunk. It's perfect. Let's go ahead and show them. And we had the game was still very different. Crossword cards weren't implemented yet.
Sure.
There were there's definitely some things that got refined throughout that process, and there was still about, I think, probably a year and a half, 2 years before the game actually went into production from that point. But we showed all of them. And they were just blown away and having so much fun. And the betrayer concept was getting them. And they're like, who's doing this? It's like trying to figure out who amongst them was, was the one betraying everything. And they were just so engaged. And at that point, like, Colby was already on board.
Yep.
And they were just incredibly excited. They had a few notes, and we took those notes and we kept iterating, and just got to the next level. And that game certainly was one of the hardest ones to work on, but it was also like there was just so much love around it from the entire team.
That's great.
Right from the beginning, and to have like it was a rare instance in that part of our history to have everyone there. So it was great that the first opportunity to show everyone was Gen Con, because everybody lived in different places at that time. So it was fantastic to have everybody around the table and be able to get all of their feedback, because they're all great. They were all great at bringing all of the projects that we had at Plaid Hat to life.
So how about for you, Lindsey? You didn't have Plaid Hat to publish your game. Did you think about bringing it to Plaid Hat or bringing it to another company? Or was it always I'm going to do this by myself on Kickstarter?
Yeah, I definitely thought about it. Isaac had seen it, obviously. And then I had talked to, I think, Portal Games or Stronghold. I don't think they were part of Portal yet. Stronghold Games about it, and a few other companies and stuff. But when push came to shove, I really wanted Alyssa to be the artist. this is just how picky I am. I really wanted Alyssa to be the artist because I'd always envisioned her. We had worked together at Weird a ton and we were really close. And I'd always built the game with her art in my mind. And so
Isn't that cool?
Yeah, when push came to shove, I just like couldn't give the baby away. I was like, there was no guarantee they were going to take Alyssa as the artist.
This is your game.
Yeah, so I ended up talking to Dogmite Games, and I'm like, hey, do you mind if I put this out through you guys? Like I'll make sure that we don't lose money on it, but I just want to be in control of every part of the development. And
That's
I
awesome.
really just needed it to be exactly my baby, which is probably why I started a company as well with Isaac, because I cannot let my designs go. Like it's a real problem.
So it's really good that you didn't get into the computer game industry to go back to what Isaac was talking about.
No,
because you owe nothing there.
Right.
Yeah. No, it would have been so hard to like see it executed in a way that I didn't envision. That would have been really hard. And that's what happens when you sign it.
I'd be curious for you then, Lindsey, because like I would feel the same way as you if I was in your position. I would have a very hard time, giving away creative control of stuff. There's, I don't let people mess with I wish I had more help on here, but quite frankly, I couldn't handle it because I would just end up, saying, look, I forget it. I'll just do it. What about like during the iteration process then? How is it getting feedback? How is it getting how hard is it for you to hear someone say, yeah, that's not working, Lindsey? You're like, yeah, that. I mean, is the constructive criticism in the iteration process difficult for you?
It was at the beginning. I think taking that criticism and especially filtering out what's important and what is just kind of the noise is something that all designers have to learn early on. And it's a skill. You get better at it. You get more practiced at it. I had a game that came out before that didn't do too great. And so I got like, the bad reviews and everything. And I had that out of the way.
That's good.
Yeah. And like kind of build up a little bit of a thick skin and stuff. So at this point, I feel fairly confident saying that feedback, I'm pretty good at processing it. It doesn't really bother me. Designers are really tough on each other.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but like we just are. I think we just tend to look at problems and we don't have a lot of time because most of this testing happens at cons when you actually have access to a lot of different brains at once.
Makes sense.
So yeah, I mean, if you're going to be a designer, you definitely need to get good at feedback, but it is a skill you can get good at. If you're not good at it now, you just need to keep practicing. And just remember that everyone who's playing it wants it to be the best thing possible.
They're on your side, right?
Yeah,
which is an important thing to keep in mind. So there's something, and I'd be curious, both Isaac and Lindsey, for your thoughts on this. I've heard this several times that as designers, playtesters do a great job of figuring out what's wrong with the game and do a terrible job of telling you how to fix it.
Very, very true.
Is it? Okay. I've heard that a lot.
Telling you how to fix it isn't really what they do at all.
Yeah. Sometimes there's been some great ideas that have come out of playtesters. So it's not necessarily 100% perfect. There were some aspects of the battle system that came from one of the youngest playtesters I've ever had on my team. He was like 14, and he was like, "Why don't you just do this?" And I was like, "Oh my god, that solves all our problems."
That's great.
So it's not like it's impossible. There's certainly amazing people out there that also have great ideas. And I'm not a person. I know that a lot of designers are very much like, I don't want to hear anything. Like, don't say it. Like, I'm not a person that's like that. I'm like, I'm willing to hear anything. Like, so many things inspire me, and I never know if it's like gonna be those things. So I don't want to cut off any sort of like inspiration potential.
But you have to filter it, like Lindsey was saying, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
Yeah, there's just a lot that we have to be. We have, at the end of the day, we're the ones who are making those decisions, and we know more than anyone else what the intention is behind the design. And sometimes if we know that, like, oh, this is a problem that you're having, you may want the game to go in this direction, but that might not be my intention or the feeling that I want to bring across.
Right.
But I know by you having this experience, I'm not creating the feeling that I originally intended to do. So I need to make changes that are going to go back in that direction. Right. And it's funny, like, every time we kind of follow that process, people are so in love with the end product
that's cool.
anyways. So it doesn't, I very rarely feel like, they should have done this. You know, they still, for the most part, they're like, yes, you guys made the right decision. So I love hearing that. That makes me feel very, very good.
I bet it does. So Lindsey, do you think, so that's talking about play testers, right? Do you think designers are the same way? When designers are critiquing other designers' games, are they better at pointing out the problems than they are offering solutions, or designers just say, look, you need to fix this and push it back to you?
It depends, but overall designers can give, I think, more accurate feedback because they understand the process more. Like
right.
When you're testing with a designer, they'll say, what's your budget? Like, because you might not have the money for the idea they're about to tell you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or something like that. Like they just have, I think, a bigger overall perspective of how the whole process works. So they're like, what's your timeline? You're not going to be able to come up with a book that fast. Don't worry about it. Let's come up with a different idea. And a lot of times they can just articulate why they think this is a good change a little bit better than a playtester. Like a playtester will often say, like, I didn't have fun and I got frustrated. And that's really good feedback that you need to know. But a designer will say, I didn't have fun, and I think it's because near the end, I didn't feel like I had a lot of options left to make interesting decisions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And obviously, like, one is a little bit more concise than the other. So the playtesters kind of like let you get a gist of what they're feeling and what they're experiencing, and you try to ask questions that will help them steer themselves into better feedback for you. But a designer is like they just have more experience at the end of the day.
Well, they know the language, right?
Yes.
And
and what's also great too is that they are looking at games when they're playing a game with a more critical eye, just in general. So they have a giant resource library that they can pull back into. Have you played this? They did this in this very interesting way, but it wasn't really utilized in the right way. And it's like, no, I've never played that. I'm going to go play these XXX games. I often walk away from those sessions with like 30 other games to play just in order to understand my game just a little bit better.
Sure. So real quick, before we take a break, when did Rose Gauntlet come to life? So what point, who approached whom? When was the seed planted?
All right. I'll try to answer this one really quickly because it's a long process. So Lindsey and I have always wanted to work together. We talked constantly throughout different points every time we'd like meet up at a con or something, and it's like, oh, it'd be so cool to work together on this or this or this. But we never knew it would exactly form into Rose Gauntlet, right? We had always dreamed to work together, but however we can make that happen, that's awesome. Yeah, so when the pandemic happens and I left Plaid Hat Games, that's when we started to really have a more serious discussion about like, hey, like, I'm really thinking about doing this. Do you want to be a part of it? And Lindsey was kind of like in the same boat. Obviously, the pandemic let us both have a moment of, what are we doing with our lives? What's going on?
It was great for like the crisis of, am I doing something I really want to be doing?
Yeah. Yes, because life is short and who knows what's going to happen next. So in the summer of 2020, we really started discussing it very, very seriously. And then around August, September, I called Lindsey and said, we're doing this. It's going to happen. We're starting in like 2 weeks. Like here's a giant
wrong number.
Map that
He lied too. It started the next day.
That's funny. Wow.
It's true. I did say 2 weeks, then I threw you a mind map the next day. It was like, here's all the different crap that we're going to do.
I had a 10-year plan the next day with up to 50 employees sketched out over 10 years. And I was like, cool.
And named. He named every one of those 50. First, we're going to hire Susan because Susan's great.
Yeah, it was crazy. It went so fast. Once we had really decided to do it, it went so fast after that.
You guys are giving me the timeline here, and I'm astounded that wasn't that long ago.
No.
So let's take a quick break and let's talk about Keystone North America and how we can spend a summer deciding we're going to start a company and then kickstart a game less than a year later. So we'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Alexander Zdanchuk from Riga, Latvia, and I'm a patron of Third Floor Wars. Those guys open the beauty of Malifaux 3rd Edition to me and continue to provide tons of great content. You can support them too. Follow the links in the show notes below or search for Third Floor Wars at patreon.com.
What is it worth to you to get this podcast on a weekly basis? Is it worth $1 a month? $5 a month? $20 a month? If you'd like to help support the work that we're doing here on Third Floor Wars, please go by our Patreon. We're at patreon.com/thirdfloorwars. There you can pledge at any level, any dollar amount. Whatever you give us will help us put out quality content on a regular basis and hopefully make tabletop gaming a little bit better for you every week. Hey, it's time to welcome some of the newest floor heads to our Patreon. Big thanks goes out to Joe Root, Alan Cardinal, Raven Zatto, Richard Beach, Philip Savoy, Patrick Allen, Third, Sean P. Kelly, Jesse Ravicki, James Kahn, Rage Quit Wire, Doc Royal, Eloy Centron, Robo Rotten, and Jacob Suderman. Because of you and the 100 plus other patrons, we're able to put out content on a weekly basis. Thank you. So it sounds like you guys had about 10 minutes to form the company, make some decisions about what the company's going to look like. You get the mind map, Lindsey. Was Keystone North America part of that mind map?
No, not at all. That was another curveball that Isaac threw me shortly after the mind map. Go ahead, Isaac. No, you tell the story so well.
So it was so random because also at the same time, Jeff Joyce, another volunteer for Plaid Hat that we had kind of both become friends with, and we were both randomly kind of mentoring in design throughout the summer. We didn't know that.
We were both mentoring.
We didn't know that at the time.
That's funny.
So he had been showing us this game, Keystone, and I was like, okay, it's good, whatever. Never thinking that it would be something that we'd sign. And just yeah, that's good. You should go here. You should go there. You should, show these other companies. And then by the time it came to the process where we were going to start this company, it was a week later that Jeff was like, oh, can I show you a new iteration? And I was like, sure, why not? And I was like, and at that point I already told him to go to different companies and pitch, and he wasn't having success. That wasn't working out. They were like, oh, our submission process is closed. This is not going to work out. Blah, blah, blah. And too bad for them. He showed me a version of the game that I thought oh, this could be something that works. At that point, Lindsey and I had created our core values. We had been very intentional with wanting to make sure that everything that we brought to the company was going to check off all of those core values.
That's cool.
And be part of Rose Gauntlet with an intention that really met that goal. Because everything we plan on doing within Rose Gauntlet is going to be in a lot of different directions, but they all need to check off these main core values. And Jeff's games hit all those marks. And
so Isaac, so what was it you played an early iteration of it and you said perfectly fine, go sell it somewhere else. Mm-hmm. He brings back this new one and something clicked for you, Isaac. So I'd be curious, and Lindsey as well, what was it that you saw in this iteration of the game that made you seriously take a look at this thing and say, we're going to back this thing?
It's interesting because I think it was more the passion that Jeff had around the project. He is incredibly enthusiastic about animal conservation, animal education, and letting people know about, different ways of living in order to help animals. He is absolutely we have learned so much from his enthusiasm.
That's cool.
Around the game. And there's that. And then the game was also hitting some mechanical, strategy notes that I had not played before, and I thought were really going to hit in the market in a certain way. It was definitely also hitting on the kind of in the space of a lot of games that I enjoyed. I'm a huge fan of Wingspan. I love Azul. I love Century. Kind of these introductory midway Euros.
Those are good games.
They're fantastic. They're some of my favorites, and some of the things that I've been really engaging with over the last few years. And his game was kind of hitting those notes, and I thought with the right adjustments, it could be formed into that game. Now, originally we thought, oh, it'll work like this. But then we started doing the thing that we normally do. Now we're going to go ahead and beat it up. Show it to all of our designer friends.
And it cracked hard.
And it cracked real hard.
Yeah,
yes.
It was a little scary, but we got it. We got it back together.
Yeah, one of the things that we learned from this process, honestly, is that we shouldn't have signed the game when we did. To be completely honest,
isn't that funny?
We probably should have waited longer, had more iterations, more time.
So it wasn't baked.
It wasn't quite baked. And one of the reasons that I came on as a co-designer, because I'm listed as a co-designer on the game now, is to make it baked.
Yeah.
To make that process work in the timetable that we were hoping to make it work. Originally, like, that's not really kind of the way that we want to approach bringing new projects in. We want to make sure that there's more refinement there. But we were just kind of excited to work with Jeff, excited about the concept, excited about the theme, excited about the potential of working with some interesting partners that the board game industry doesn't necessarily work with. Different foundations and conservation efforts that were going on. And we just really wanted to see this game come to life. And we did everything within our power to make that happen.
Well, you sure did. So Lindsey, I'd be curious, when did it first land on your desk? And how did Isaac drop it?
He dropped it with a lot of passion and a 2-hour video call. It was, between Isaac and Jeff, there was so much passion for the game and so much excitement and so much possibility that I was sold by the end of it. I was a little skeptical at the start, but by the end of it, I was sold. And then for me, when I really fell in love with it is when we developed the solo version. That's when I personally was like, oh, this is going to be a really cool game now. I am so excited to work on this. So it was really at that point, because that's when we involved the stories and we started like really educating people about North American environmental issues and stuff. And it was just so cool. So I was into it before, but when we did the solo version, that's when like the vision really came together for me. And I was like, I see where this game can go. You're right. It's going to be awesome. I'm so
and at that point, I
it.
kind of already started coming in on the design and started making some considerable adjustments as well.
So, Lindsey, it had to have been educational and interesting, but not fun to watch the game get broken and put back together again.
Well, I mean, it's always panic-inducing when a game breaks. I always thought it was just my games were panic-inducing when they break, but apparently any game that you're in charge of is panic-inducing when it breaks.
Any game.
And I think like we had just thought it was further along, because like Isaac and I, we're not perfect. We're still learning too.
Sure.
I think that's really cool and good, and like people should know that. Like no matter how successful we look, Isaac and I still learn all the time. But
you stop being good when you stop learning. I mean, that's just the reality.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But yeah, it was a scary moment. But like the thing is, I knew we were always going to be able to get there, because Isaac and I, like, my games have broken worse than that. You know what I mean? I know Isaac's games that have seen have broken worse than that. Like,
oh yes.
Like I knew that no matter what, the team was going to be able to get it there, and we were going to be just fine. And and that's why the passion meant more than the fine tuning of those mechanics, because we couldn't fake or build the passion if we didn't feel it. But like we can fix the mechanics. We've done that 1,000 times for a bunch of things.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. Like it speaks volumes that we were willing to work with Jeff, because knowing Jeff, having had him volunteer in the past, and having him come out to dinners with us, and knowing him, it does help, because signing a designer is like getting into a marriage. Like, it's going to be a long-term contract. Yep. You are here with us. If this game is successful, even more so. Yeah. You know, having known that throughout the last 10 years of working at Plaid Hat, I've known that, like, we want to make sure that we're working with great people in addition. And his passion for it has been absolutely amazing. We've learned so much from working with him. We've learned so much, and I'm so excited for everybody to get Jeff's fun facts that we've added into the future.
He has so many fun facts.
I'm now realizing, because I've been so anxious to talk about kind of the process this game went through, we haven't told anybody what the damn game is. So, Isaac, can you give us kind of an overview for the listeners, give them an idea of what Keystone North America is?
Yeah, Keystone North America is a strategy set collection game in which players will be taking new animals from the field, placing them on their player boards in order to gain points and create amazing sets of ecosystems in order to gain awesome points. They also get to utilize skills as field biologists that are going to allow them to provide better ecosystems for their animals, research those animals, and complete their secret objectives. They also have the opportunity to gain these awesome wild cards that if they can't quite find the right chains, they can bring them all together through these wild cards if they need to. There's also an amazing solo component of the game that allows players to play through the first year of a field biologist's junior field biologist time in the field, learning different aspects and different efforts that are being taken place across North America to help these animals that are keystone animals, endangered and threatened animals, and other animals throughout the North America that need a special assistance, ecosystems that need to be taken care of, and just different research and day-to-day lives that these field biologists have to go through in a kind of heightened way.
That's cool. That's cool. Well, what's interesting to me about that is it's two things. One, I'm hearing mechanics that I like and I'm familiar with, but I'm also not hearing a Reiner Knizia painted on theme. It sounds to me like the theme of the game is very much integrated into the design as well, which I think is super exciting.
Yes, and that was actually one of the big challenges originally in starting the game. One of the things that we were very much trying to make happen is that all of the animals, the habitats that they have on their cards are the habitats that they live in. Right. If they are threatened or endangered, they are threatened or endangered currently, as far as like 2020. Those lists change all the time. If they're keystone animals, they're keystone animals, which doesn't necessarily, life isn't always a perfect balance.
Yeah, that was the hardest game to balance I've ever done.
I bet.
Yes. So it took a lot of time, and this is where we give a lot of kudos to Jeff, to research all of these animals. We have over 60 individual species within the game and more that you unlock throughout the solo campaign. And all of that research in order to find the perfect animals to put in the game in order to provide the best balance with all of those different symbols that are combined. It is certainly like the best effort that we could possibly do in order to engage all of that and still hopefully provide even more expansion material as things move forward. We've also brought on a guy named Joe, who's also helping us with additional resources. He's a biologist as well. Awesome. And he's helping us double check that we made all those right decisions. That's which luckily for the most part we're doing pretty good. Joe's pretty happy with us right now.
He said he appreciated how much we talked about Florida being a horrible place to work in the summer as a biologist.
You knew the code word, right? That Florida sucks.
I appreciate the research that went into the story campaign because Florida is a terrible assignment to get in the summer.
Oh, that's funny. So, obviously, for those listening, if you're listening this the week that the episode comes out, we've got about a week or so left on the Kickstarter itself. There's a link in the show notes to the Kickstarter. I'll be blasting it, obviously, on Twitter and Facebook. But before we close out, Lindsey, I feel a little bit of a kinship with you and your passion for board games because as you were talking about falling in love and like buying every game in the world and like going broke, I'm like, yeah, I that's me. That's what happened to me. I found, I found a game and then like I bought every game.
And you're like me because it's not just board games. You do the war games.
Oh, I know.
It's horrible. Yeah, it's everything.
I hate money. Like I hate money, like with a passion. What I want to close with though, Lindsey, is as somebody like me who has played a lot of games, right? We've bought a lot of games, we've played a lot of games. What, for listeners listening right now, what's unique about Keystone North America? I heard a lot of stuff that sounds comfortable and like I like what Isaac was saying. I'm like, those are the games I like too. But for somebody like you, Lindsey, who's played so many games, what can you think of one thing that was like, this is what makes this game different?
For me personally, it's definitely the solo campaign.
Yeah,
because it's 20 missions. They're all puzzly.
Oh,
they
wow.
all have. Yeah, it's 20 missions long. It's a full story. You're going to play through an entire story of every assignment this field journal or this field biologist goes through. All the locations, they're all heavily researched. They've been looked over by biologists. But all of them have like special rules.
Oh,
so,
that's cool.
Like you're going to play one where there's something on the other side of these things called research tokens, which are played in multiplayer. But on the other side, there's something called the story token. And we use story tokens to come up with all the special, like, put a story token on this, and you're going to have to fly your bees around, and you're going to have to move all these story tokens around. things like that. And I think for me personally, that is the most exciting and innovative part of the game. Because I've never played a solo version that wasn't, I've never done a game it's either a solo game and that's it. It's all it is. And you kind of have a little bit of that experience. Or you have the multiplayer game and the solo is kind of like, oh, just see if you can beat your high score.
Correct.
So to have a full campaign plus like, I love RPGs and I've done a lot of I've done writing for RPGs, stuff like that. So like, there's a lot of that love because I can't help myself poured into that.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, and when you told me that there was a solo thing, and when I hear a game that's multiplayer that has a solo, I automatically think of exactly what you said. And then when you start talking about different campaigns and there's 20, I'm like, holy crap, this is
secret
fully
envelopes,
fleshed out.
If you do your thing, you get secret
envelope.
Gloomhaven
secret envelope thing going?
Nice. You get to open your secret envelopes in solo and you get to add them to the future assignments and stuff. It's very cool.
Oh, that's great. So as you guys heard early on, I've already committed to, because I want to talk to Lindsey about a lot of things, including the role-playing game stuff. I mean, there's so much more I want to talk to. Isaac, there's a ton of stuff. I want to learn a lot of the dirty secrets of a lot of the iterations of your games. One of my favorite things is learning how the sausage is made, which we did a little bit here, but we're going to do it a little bit more. So everybody listening, we can look forward to having them back again. We've got the links to the Kickstarter. It's Keystone North America. You've got about a little over a week, depending on when you're catching this, to get over there. Guys, a fantastic time. I really appreciate you both making the time.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. You certainly lived up to your fun reputation. So nice job. I will report to my friends that it did not disappoint, and I said I would come back on.
The mic's going to turn off. She's going to turn the mic and go, dude, he was awful. Like, what? Are you kidding me? I will never trust you again. All right. And for those of you that stuck around to the end, thanks for listening. Take care. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch so you don't miss the avalanche of content we create. Links are in the show notes. Be sure to check out our shop on thirdfloorwars.com for the latest in gaming apparel and gear. There you'll also find the latest information for the US FOE Tour. Find out where you rank in your conference or even in the entire United States. Get those models built, painted, and ready so we can see you at the next US FOE Tour Masters event. Please take a moment to write a review of this pod on your favorite platform. Rating and reviewing helps us find more listeners almost as cool as you are. Be sure to share this feed with all of your friends who love tabletop gaming. Thanks for listening. Guys, if you had told me it was 2 years ago, I would have believed you. That's incredible.
Yeah, it's been so fast. We work a lot.
No wonder you're tired and want to stop talking about it.
Yeah.
Wrap it up, Shipman.
It's what happens when two workaholics team up, I think.
I'm sure.
It's kind of reckless. All
right, so what we'll do the last thing on Keystone, then we'll plug the Kickstarter. You can plan on this. Let me just quickly look at my calendar. It's the 12th. So I will, and this is running till the end of June. The Kickstarter is that right?
Correct.
All right, so let's
June 17th. It's going to be a 30-day Kickstarter.
June 17th is when it ends.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. So what I'll do is I'll have this release in the first week, probably on June 1st.
Awesome.
It's probably when I'll have this drop. So that's the time frame we'll talk in. Is like, the Kickstarter will be ending soon in the next week or so, and as we talk through it, because that's when it will go live. Okay.
Sounds good.
All right, beautiful. Right. So we had a terrible time getting comfortable and conversational, but we'll get through this. That was absolutely perfect. This is exactly what I like on my podcast. So
awesome.
I appreciate it. All right, so I'm trying to think of the way I want to do this. All right, so I'm going to put you guys both against the wall. I'm going to have you guys have to commit to me. You both will come back and talk about Labryinthos and talk about Dead of Winter and the other stuff. Does that sound good?
Coming back. Are you good with that, Isaac?
Yeah. Right. I have to go.
Even though you're an Outcast player. Even though you're an Outcast player, I will forgive you. I will come back.
I don't play Outcast. Who told you that? Yeah, perfect. All right, great. All right, good. So that what then I'll do then, instead of focusing on those then, because we've kind of talked about them a little bit, Let's talk about you getting together and the forming of the company and kind of we'll lay the groundwork and then we'll do Keystone for the last segment. Does that sound good?
Sounds good.
Awesome. And the good news is I'm booked for recordings until like September, so you got a ton of time without having to deal with me.
Nice.
You get the whole summer off.
I'll forget how to play Labryinthos by then. I'll be so entrenched in something else.
And, it's funny you say that because like there's some times where I feel a little bit bad because I have people on. Like I had Steve Jackson on, right, from Steve Jackson Games, and like I wanted to talk about GURPS. And poor Steve Jackson's like the last fucking thing I want to talk about is GURPS. I made that like 30 years ago, asshole. Gauntlet. Now, Lindsey, for close to a decade, has applied her passion for design towards making board games. She's contributed to several board games and role-playing game. Blah, blah, blah. All right. Yeah, I messed all that up. I'm going to start again. Hey. Are you still here? Look, the podcast is over. And you sat through all of the breaks and bloopers? Well, I mean, if you're here, you might as well run over to patreon.com and become a supporter. Don't forget to rate and review this podcast too while you're at it, on whatever platform you're listening to. I do appreciate you sticking around. Take care.